have a few do's and don'ts. So I'm gonna give you 6 do's, 6 don'ts. Make sure that you are prepared to fail. Everything is not gonna be great. If you are thinking about doing a podcast, the only way to learn if you're gonna be good at it or to get better at it is to do that.
What's up? Welcome to the You Know's Best Pod. I appreciate your support. In return, I hope I provide you with some worthwhile gems that benefit you on your journey. At the very least, I hope I put a smile on your face. If not, hopefully you share this with someone that does benefit. And I got you next time. Again, thanks for joining today, and let's get this thing going.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the You Know's Best Pod. Today's episode is going to be kind of focused on my journey as a podcaster, some do's and some don'ts. But yeah, welcome. Thanks for coming. Make sure you like, share, comment, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, follow my YouTube page, follow me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And keep showing support. I appreciate y'all. So if you've been following the journey, you've been following the podcast, I've been doing this since end of June. And this was really a way for me to highlight my network of, friends and fellow professionals that are doing great things in the community, in the world, and business, because I do have a business that is centered around consulting and providing or facilitating mentorship for small business owners and Black business owners. And so the podcast is more of a conduit to showcase that network, but also provide some free game, some knowledge, some gems to people that they might not have necessarily gotten otherwise. And so I have a few do's and don'ts. So I'm gonna give you 5 do's. Actually, I'm gonna give you 6 do's, 6 don'ts that I have learned over the last 6 months. And hopefully this will be helpful for any of you that decide that you want to do a podcast, that are going into business, whatever you choose. But I think, this should be helpful for anybody that's watching and thinking about doing a podcast. All right, let's do the do's. Do start podcasting. If you are thinking about doing a podcast, the only way to learn if you're going to be good at it or to get better at it is to do that. And I think that's been a consistent message across the board from people that are doing podcasts, that are doing anything, is that you should do it. If you don't do it, then you won't know if you're good at it. You won't know if what you need to fix or what you need to work on. So make sure you do it. So that's the first do, is make sure that you get out there and build that callus, build that skill set, and get better at it. Do invest in your tools for your podcast. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, you want to put the best thing out there that you can. Now, I'm not saying going and spending thousands of dollars on equipment and things of that nature. But if you're going to get a camera, spend money on that one camera. I'm not saying buy tons of cameras. I have, in the last 6 months, bought 3 cameras. I'm currently shooting on 2 Sony FX30s. That's not necessarily the cameras that you need to have. Those were suggested to me at a podcast summit. I think that they shoot very well, so I use them. From a business standpoint, I'm going to get to write those off on my taxes. So that's a benefit of investing into your podcast, into your equipment. But I also shot off a Canon. I shot off my computer. So you can get away, if you're going to do like podcasts of just yourself and you're not going to have guests, you could just record, get a good like webcam for your computer if you want to just shoot and do Zooms or things like that. Just make sure you invest in equipment, do your research, and buy the best equipment that's going to make you feel good about the content that you're putting out. I had mics. At first I had a single mic that was actually kind of hard to transport around and take to different places. So then I invested in these mics. Same company, mono, but they are actually more portable. They're easier to navigate, and it actually creates better sound for me and my guests because we each have our own mic that we can speak into. But you can also get the lapel mics. That'd probably be my next investment, just because sometimes I get tired of breaking down these mics when I could just have a mic on my lapel or on my shirt, whatever. So make sure you invest in the right equipment, hard drive, whatever you want to do. Another do your research on other podcasts. Watch other podcasts. You cannot become a better podcaster if you don't know what other people are doing to set yourself apart, right? I watch podcasts all the time as kind of research, whether it be about topics, whether it be about how I want to intro my show, how I want to outro my show, or just be better, learn something that I'm not possibly doing at that time, right? So I would say make sure that you do watch other podcasts or listen to other podcasts just to see what other people are doing out there that you may want to try or may want to avoid. If you're going to get guests, make sure that your guests understand that you're going to want them to share the content that you're creating, right? So make sure on the front end that you're communicating. Make sure that you do this. Communicate on the front end. Hey, if you're going to be a guest on the show, the expectation is that you are going to work as a collaborator with the content, right? If I post content, I need you to collaborate with it so that you're being exposed to my network and my followers, and I'm being exposed to your followers. That's the only way that we can expand our following and what we're trying to accomplish. So make sure you do that on the front end with your guests, because sometimes you might get a guest on and then they decide that they don't want to share the content. Well, that was a waste. That was a waste of time, honestly, for you and that person, because the content's not getting out to their audience. So make sure that you do that. Make sure that you are prepared to fail. Understand that you are going to fail. So do your best, but do prepare yourself to fail. Everything is not going to be great. Not every episode is going to be received well. Not every episode is going to be a hit. And that just comes with the territory. So understand that you're not always going to be successful on the front end. So I guess really is do be patient. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with the content. Be patient with your growth. So that's the do, right? So do be patient with yourself and your content and the growth of your following and your podcast, right? It's not going to always be great. Last do, I want to make this a good one, a really, really good one. Do be authentic. I started off with this podcast probably with one thing in mind, and it's evolved over the last 6 months. But if you guys follow my channel, you know I had the Tots episode, and that's also authentically me. I have opinions. I am very bold in my opinions, and I don't really care that much about what people think of my opinions because it's an opinion. And I know that it's an opinion, so I don't expect people to follow my opinions or agree with my opinions, right? I'm not trying to convince you. But I'm also doing it jokingly most of the time. So that gives you an authentic look into who I am and like my sense of humor. So I think it is important to be authentic. Do be authentic when you are doing these podcasts, because people will see that you are fake or that you are not being real. And it is important to grow your audience, to grow your following, for you to be the most authentic version of yourself. So people will gravitate towards you. Okay. So we got our do's, right? Let's talk about our don'ts. These are the big ones. Okay. Don't. And I mean, don't do a live podcast. That was my first episode. Do not do a live podcast with the audience until you've kind of probably built up understanding of what it is to podcast. Your audience knows when to be quiet or when to talk or when to engage, because that was my first episode. And I would say that was probably my worst episode because I couldn't really control for my friends saying things in the background or, kind of interrupting. So I would say make sure that you don't do a live podcast as your first episode, or until you're kind of really good at doing podcasting. Don't spend a lot of time doing things that you can outsource. So when I first started my podcast, I was editing myself, and you can kind of tell, right? I don't have time to sit here for hours editing. I'm not the most technical person. So like, if you can afford it, then don't do it yourself. Like, you can go on Fiverr, you can find podcasts. I currently work with a podcast geek. They edit my content for me. It'll save you time. I don't suggest spending a lot of time and energy trying to edit your podcast unless you just really want to be a jack of all trades behind your podcast content. So that's my opinion. Take it or leave it. But that's a don't for me, especially with people that have like full-time 9-to-5s and other things. Just probably don't have time to sit there and edit and break down content, especially if you're doing multiple cameras. What else? Don't listen to everybody. Not everybody's opinion is a good opinion. Not everybody's feedback is going to be useful. So, like I said, be authentic to yourself. There's going to be some feedback from people that are genuinely want you to succeed and want you to do well. But make sure that you're not taking in everyone's commentary or everyone's feedback and trying to apply it. It will not serve you. It will not help your podcast. It will not help your content, because if it's against what your vision is and it's not authentic to you, then it will come off that way. Make sure that you have discernment about who you're receiving your feedback from, and don't listen to everybody, because everybody's opinion really ain't worth the tone that it comes off of. Don't spare expense on lighting. This is something I'm still kind of battling with. I need to actually invest in better lighting. Today is probably a good lighting day. We'll see when the content comes out, because I'm filming early in the day when it's bright outside and I have my windows open and everything like that. A lot of times I have to film at night, and I have to kind of figure out what my lighting situation is going to be with the lights that I have. But yeah, don't be cheap on your investment in lighting. I think my best episode was my episode with my best friend Dom, and he had a big ass light in the house. You can see the quality of the content from the lighting. So that's one thing. Don't put out content that is not going to help anybody, right? And this is just my observation from podcasters in general. A lot of podcasters are just saying stuff to say it. It's not helpful to anybody. It's detrimental to the community. It's detrimental to others. So don't become a podcaster just to get your shit off and to talk crap about other people or other segments or groups of people, like man bashing, woman bashing, gay bashing, and group bashing, right? I still stand on, like, this is not a platform for me to bash any group. Everybody can get in on my podcast. So like, I'm not a respecter of persons when it comes to that. If you do some foul stuff or you're doing stuff that I don't agree with, I'm gonna speak on it. But this isn't a space to come on and bash one specific group over and over again. That'll never be what my podcast is about or anything that I put out. So don't just be making content to get reactions. I mean, I know for some people that sells, but I'm against it. Sue me. Don't have people on your podcast that are boring. Some people are just boring. And I'm not saying that any of my guests have been boring, but I've seen podcasts where people are just boring and they just on there taking up space and taking up time. And it doesn't really help push your podcast forward. So make sure that when you do pick people, that they're interesting and that they are open to having a conversation. You don't want somebody on there that's all clammed up and doesn't want to talk. It doesn't help you. The last one I'll say here, I think this is number 6. If it's not, oh well. Don't come on your own podcast without a plan. When I first started, I didn't have a plan of how I wanted the episode to go. I was kind of winging it. You could kind of tell. But what I will say is the content comes off a lot better, a lot more fluid if you have a plan. So don't just get on there winging it and thinking you're going to put out some good content. Most podcasters aren't good enough to just wing it. And then the last one here, and maybe this is bonus, maybe this is number 6. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is a part of everything. When you fail, you learn a lesson, right? And I might have kind of said this earlier, but when you fail, you can get better. And so don't hesitate. Don't be afraid to fail, because when you do that, you hinder yourself. You hurt your ability to grow as a person in any avenue that you may be pursuing. But yeah, don't hesitate and don't be afraid to fail, because you're bound to fail at something. So yeah. All right. Well, those are my do's and my don'ts of being a podcaster after 6 months. maybe I'll do this again in another 6 months and see if I have anything new to add. As always, be easy or don't, but every choice has a consequence and every action has a reaction. So I wish y'all peace, patience, understanding, knowledge, wisdom, discernment, health, strength, resolve. Take it easy. Make sure y'all like, share, and comment.